Hello, America. Last night, we only got through, I think, what we had planned for the first 10 minutes of the program. But there is so much going on, and this is very important, that I want to take you through all of this carefully and slowly. I don't know if we're going to make it to the end of this program tonight either, but we will give it our best shot. What I want to try to show you is what I said to you on the very first show that I did here at Fox News, and that is the problem with the news is they look at individual stories and no one ties it all together. And I know that immediately makes you into somebody with a tinfoil hat. Or does it? Or does it? I want you to listen carefully, please, and DVR this show and remember what I tell you. I will be held responsible. Believe me, nobody's going to forget the things that I said if I'm wrong. I need you to remember the things that I said if I am right. I told you yesterday the perfect storm theory is something I have been studying and talking about for about 7 years. It is a theory that the world will have so many different pressures on it. Events and pressures and wars and everything else that we have all dealt with over the course of our lifetime, but never all at the same time. And the result could be catastrophic global collapse. I believe that we are headed in that direction. If I'm wrong, crucify me more than you already do. ABC's Good Morning America did an investigative report today, and they aired a clip of a critic that said I was gloom and doom. Oh, am I a bummer? I'm sorry. Then they played me. Well, you just have to watch. Watch. This is what they used yesterday.
His trademark blackboard filled with conspiracy theories. Even last night, his show was filled with visions of impending global doom.
I believe we're heading into deep and treacherous waters. What gloom and doom? That's crazy. Treacherous waters ahead? Damn the torpedoes, Captain. Keep the Titanic at full speed. What are we, crazy? What could possibly make a man say such a rash and reactionary comment like we're headed in deep and treacherous waters? Could it be the global financial crisis? Oh, I know. How about the food prices that are rising at everybody's grocery stores all around the world? How about inflation? Or could it be the violent uprisings in the Middle East that everybody said was going to be great, and now it's just cascading and setting the whole Middle East on fire? Strangely, all around all the oil wells. Don't worry about that. There's always plenty of oil. We've got some here. Of course, we're not drilling for it anymore, but don't worry about it. Could it be the radical hardline Islam grabbing power in the Middle East and teaming up with socialists now in Europe? Proof. How about the natural disasters? You know, Japan just had another big earthquake today. Geez, what was I thinking? Man, I'm such a downer. I don't know how I saw any of the gloom and doom. I want you, because you watch this show every night, and you know me, to not take away the gloom and doom. That's not the message I'm trying to give you. I started doing this show for a reason. To try to stop the cascading. I remember I was on the radio 3 years ago and I said, gang, get off of the highway. Get off of the highway. We're passing all of the exits. We've had many exits. I don't believe there are exits left. What's coming is going to be bad. Our reaction to it is what turns us off or not. All I'm trying to do is to prepare you so you can be a shelter for others, so you can help. Because a lot of people have been listening to these dopes on all these other channels saying it's not a problem. And all they will do, I promise you this, remember these words. When these things come to pass, all they will do is point fingers. It doesn't matter whose fault. At that point, it doesn't matter. What matters is, how does it end? Where do you go from there? Yesterday, I showed this board to you because there's a few things that have happened and have come to my attention, and they are things that I have been looking for and warning against for a while. And they were happening not here. This was one of them. But one of them was here, and one of them is here. Tonight, I want to start here in Japan. The crisis in Japan, remember, the idea is that the world will be under so much pressure, it will not be able to stand. The system will be overloaded. It's like those nuclear power plants. You could say, a guy who was on television saying, hey, if we have a 9 on the Richter scale, those things could crack open. They weren't designed to carry that load. Oh, the crazy guy. Well, you had one. So now, are we going to stand around and point the finger, or are we going to figure out how to fix it? All the TV cameras were all in, strangely, all in Japan, and that for that 1 week, man, everybody was concerned about the Japanese people. Now, to hell it seems with the Japanese people, to hell it seems with the nuclear reactor. I don't see a lot of reporting from Japan. It was wall-to-wall coverage for a week. Well, today they had another 7.1. Now, the reason why I bring it up is because just a few months back, the IMF came out with a report. We told you about it on this program. It was before the massive earthquake and tsunami that hit Japan. The report listed Japan as one of the 10 countries that could not financially survive anything devastating to their economy, whether it be man-made or natural. Well, then they had the earthquake. Remember, the IMF comes out with a report. It cannot withstand it. Biggest earthquake, I think, recorded, right? Well, so now what does Japan do? Well, Japan has to come up with some money to be able to help their people, so they start inflating their money. They just start printing money just to cover the cost of things. They had to evacuate. People had to get back to work. What are they going to do? Well, how long does that last? Well, our central bankers knew, well, that can't last long. So what did the central banks do? The central banks all over the world decided, we're going to help. And we're going to hold down the rate of inflation by printing money all over the globe. So now we're inflating all of the money all over the globe. Let me ask you, how long does that last? You're already feeling the effects of just the United States inflating their money all around the globe. This is just one event that has already put people out of work in Louisiana. How does an earthquake affect Louisiana? Because we're one global order already. Because they can't get parts from Japan to make things. This is one of the pressures that we showed you that are helping build up the perfect storm. And it is money pressures. And the money pressure, Japan is on the brink. That's what they'll tell you now. It's on the brink. But wait a minute. I read the IMF report. They were on the brink before the first earthquake. So do we believe that the IMF is telling us the truth now? Or was the IMF telling us the truth then? Which do you believe? Which is more prudent to believe? This one event has rippled across the ocean. Here. And it's rippling across the entire planet. That's one event. But these things are happening elsewhere. Do you remember when we told you last summer that the IMF again said Spain and Portugal, if they fall apart, it will cascade and push other Euro nations all over the edge. Do you remember that? Spain has 19% unemployment now, thanks to the green jobs, and Portugal is getting bailed out again. And now they're only on the brink, and nobody is talking about what they said would happen last year. So what's it going to take to push them over? And once Europe's financial crisis spread, well then, will you see bank failures and government failures? And will you see more inflation or less inflation? This is the question that I want you to ask yourself. The events of the world, do not read them the way the papers and the television shows want you to read things, that it's an isolated incident. It is not. It is not. It is not coordinated, but they are additional problems. Look, if you're struggling at home and you're about to lose your house, and all of a sudden your car breaks down, is that the mortgage company conspiring against you? No. No. But now you have the car that you have to pay for, and you don't have the money for your house. Things compile. You have to ask yourself, with the news of the day, are we headed in a direction that is more stable or less stable? That rise in inflation leads to a rise of the cost of basic necessities all around the world. Necessities like food. A food crisis which is already being felt all around the globe. People's grocery bills. Do I need to tell you this? How much are you paying for your groceries? Do you remember when the same people who are telling you that I'm gloomy, doomy now, do you remember what they said to you when I said last year, prepare? This spring, I said, inflation would begin to kick in and you would have problems at the grocery store. Do you remember that? Well, why is inflation happening? Well, there's several factors. High energy prices. Why is there high energy prices? Well, we're not drilling. We have the Middle East on fire. Has anybody noticed that the fires that they're setting, the revolutions are happening around the oil fields? And nobody seems to care. I don't hear anybody even talking about that. Meanwhile, America is burning her food for fuel. Something I talked about probably 5 years ago. I said we are going to be remembered as a suicidal people, burning our own food for fuel. And we're not alone. China is burning 98% of the world's cassava chips to make biofuel. Cassava is the third largest source of carbohydrates for meals in the world. Third, 98% burned in cars. Suicidal? Smart? In a time of a food crisis, does it make it more stable or less stable? The price has doubled since 2008 because it's being burned for fuel. And while we're at food, do you remember when I told you about Cass Sunstein pushing for more regulation on food, making it more and more difficult, making it more difficult on farmers, on producers? It would drive the cost of food up. Do you remember that episode? Well, now, try this one on for size. Cass Sunstein and the FDA are now questioning the rights, this will blow your mind, the rights of families to, quote, produce and obtain and consume the foods of their choice. They go on to say, quote, there is no deeply rooted historical tradition of unfettered access to foods of all kinds. To the contrary, society's long history of food regulation stretches back to the dietary laws of biblical times. So now we have Cass Sunstein and the radicals in Washington actually quoting the Bible and suddenly finding Moses important. I can't write this stuff.